Hey guys, welcome back to the show, Seahawks Now, and we've got some really interesting trade rumors to get into today. And this is what we live for as NFL fans is stuff like this. The Packers are reportedly interested in DK Metcalf, and there's an actual conversation being had right now between the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to talk about that today, talk about what the Seahawks reported asking price is, and talk about whether I think it'd be a good idea or a bad idea, which, spoiler alert, I think it's a bad idea, but we'll see. I think with a caveat, it's a bad idea. So, Metcalf to Green Bay Packers. Is there actual smoke here? Or is it just, is there a fire or is it just smoke? I think there could be something happening. Corbin K. Smith, one of my most trusted Seahawks reporting sources, he said there are conversations being had. And he said, obviously, we can't take anything for granted. We can't, think we know what's really being said in these conversations. But he kind of likened it to the Russell Wilson thing, where it was like, yeah, for a couple off seasons, there was smoke with Russell Wilson. And then he ended up getting traded. And it was kind of shocking when we kept hearing it. But when you hear rumors about the same player year after year, which is kind of what's been going on with DK now. Remember, there were rumors last year too. A lot of times what that means is that player and his team, whether it's his agent or his manager or whatever, his team and his camp are kind of pushing those rumors out there like, hey, what if DK got traded? DK's manager slips in a little note to Fox Sports, hey, what if DK got traded? Fox Sports does a story. Oh, ESPN picks it up. Now the local Seahawks outlets. And then all of a sudden, it's all over the internet. And then, DK's manager, again, slips in a little note. Well, I'm hearing the Saints might be interested. Oh, I'm hearing the Ravens might be interested. I'm hearing the Packers might be interested. That's what it was for Russ. Remember, we heard all these different teams that were apparently interested in Russ. The Giants one year were maybe going to trade for Russ. There's all these things, and then eventually he did get traded. I know we were all kind of shocked by it as Seahawks fans, but that's what happened. So I do think that potentially there could be a scenario where, yeah, DK could get traded. This is the most I've ever thought. Like today, this morning, opening my phone, was the most that I've ever thought that he could get traded. Because there are actual conversations being had between Schneider and the Packers. Now, reportedly, the Seahawks asking price is for the number 23 pick and one of the Packers' young wide receivers. So we'll get into this in a future video. If these talks continue, we'll get into which wide receiver. But for now, we'll just essentially say this. The Packers have 4 solid young receivers, which is, they've kind of been blessed. They've got Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks. 4 good young receivers. Now, the problem for the Packers is that none of them are great, and they all kind of fill the same role. They don't really have that big body. They have 4 guys who have decent speed and run good routes. But they don't really have that big physical presence like a DK Metcalf or an AJ Brown or a Jamar Chase sort of a weapon. They don't have that. And I think that's kind of what they want. I think they want to have a bit of more variety in their receiving corps. Watson, Doubs, Wicks, and Reed, I think Reed is probably the best. But like I said, we are going to do that as a future video. We'll probably cover that next week if these talks are continuing. Because I'm going to have to do a little more research and kind of figure out which of those 4 would I most rather have if I'm a Seahawks fan. But apparently the asking price is that the Seahawks want one of those 4, and they want the number 23 pick, which is a first-round pick. So that's a significant asking price, especially considering Metcalf only has 1 more year on his contract. So for 1 year of DK to get a first round pick and a young receiver to potentially replace him, that I think is a fair trade, right? I think that's pretty fair for what DK's worth. But do I think it's a good idea, right? Just because a trade is a fair one doesn't necessarily make it a good idea, right? You could say it would be a fair trade for the Chiefs to trade Travis Kelce for 2 first-round picks because he's older and his production's gone off by a little bit. You could say that would be a fair trade. And you'd be right, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a smart trade because the connection between Kelce and Mahomes is what has kept that offense so dominant. So just because a trade is fair doesn't necessarily make it smart. You know, if you have 4 good offensive linemen and only 1 good defensive lineman, it might be fair to trade away your 1 defensive lineman to get another good offensive lineman, but that doesn't make it smart. And so, yeah, I think a first-round pick and Christian Watson would be fair for DK Metcalf. I think that's a fair price. Is it smart? I would say no. And maybe that's the biased Seahawks fan in me. Maybe that's just because I have a DK Metcalf jersey on right now. Actually, I don't. I have a Bobby Wagner jersey on. I do have a DK Metcalf jersey in my closet. So maybe that's just the DK Metcalf part of me that yeah, at heart, I'm a bit of a fanboy. You know? Whatever. That's what I do. I talk about the Seahawks for a living. I literally have like a Seahawks shrine in my bedroom. And at the same time, part of me thinks that this is I've analytically thought this through. The number 23 pick is not guaranteed to be as good as DK Metcalf is. And Christian Watson, for as much as talented, and he is young, talented, but he would be pretty clearly your number 2 receiver. Whereas Metcalf is, maybe he's your number 2, but he's definitely a better number 2. I mean, with Metcalf, there's a discussion of, is it JSN or is it Metcalf? If you bring in Christian Watson, it's pretty clearly JSN number 1, Watson number 2. So that's part 1. But part 2 is, yeah, the number 23 pick, it's a good pick, don't get me wrong. But especially when you consider the Seahawks' history of drafts hasn't gone that well. I mean, when have they really hit on a first-round pick recently? It feels like they haven't. Well, they have. Okay. Don't get me wrong. They did draft JSN. They did draft... But Devon Witherspoon, they got with the number 5 pick. He was obviously going to be a hit. JSN was a hit. A lot of the others, though, haven't really been. Byron Murphy, the jury's still out on him, and Charles Cross, the jury is still out on him. But for a team that over the past 5 to 8 years, drafting has not necessarily been their forte, I don't think the number 23 pick is a guarantee of success. Now, maybe the idea is we're going to take 23 and we're going to take their pick, which is 16, and we're going to offer 16 and 23 to move up, let's say, into the top 10 and draft Shedeur Sanders. Well, then it would be totally worth it. Or if you want to say, yeah, we're going to take that pick from the Green Bay and turn around and offer it to the Browns for Myles Garrett. Yeah, that would be worth it. But if you said, we're going to take the 23rd pick and then we're going to trade down to 29 because we love trading down, and then we're going to take some random, linebacker who's going to be fine but not great, which seems like what happens a lot in these drafts, right? We'll take a lineman or a linebacker or somebody that turns out to be decent but not amazing. Then my answer would be absolutely not. So obviously it's tough. You don't know what you're going to get out of that draft pick. But I think the only scenario that I would do that trade is if they have talked to Metcalf himself and he has told them straight up, I'm not sure if I want to be a Seahawk when I hit free agency. Like, if there's a part of, and we don't know this. As fans, we can't know this. Maybe it'll get leaked. If DK internally is thinking to himself, I want to hit free agency, I want to test the waters, and there's a good chance I'm going to go somewhere other than Seattle, then I'm like, okay, yeah, let's trade him. Let's get something back for him. But if DK is open to an extension, then I would rather extend him than trade him. Because while I do think a first-round pick plus one of the Packers receivers, I do think that's a fair price, I just don't think it's smart when you consider the Seahawks need to have a great weapon, a great group of weapons, whether it's Geno or whether it's a rookie at quarterback, which is pretty much the only options right now. They need to have a good set of weapons. And DK being there really helps. With that all being said, guys, comment down below. What do you think about these rumors? I want to hear your thoughts. And as always, until next time, go Seahawks.